Last week on Awaken to Freedom, we met Deanna Moore. She was a fifth generation Jehovah's Witness, was married for the third time to a man who was 10 years older than her, also an elder, and they had gone down to the Dominican Republic to be missionaries with her three kids. While they're there, her husband, who happens to be an alcoholic, gets addicted to pain pills because of a shoulder injury. When that happens, he actually starts abusing Dena. So she goes to the elders. When she tells the elders that, they publicly reprove her husband. Because of that, he's humiliated. He loses his status as an elder and as a missionary. So what does he do? He drains the bank accounts and flees the country, leaving Dena and her three children stranded in the Dominican Republic. So with that, here's part two. Welcome to Awaken to Freedom. I'm your host, Jada. This podcast is all about finding your freedom after leaving abusive environments, whether that be a high control religion, a cult, or a toxic relationship. Each week we interview brave women who have escaped these controlling situations, discovered their voice, and gone on to lead incredible lives. Their stories are very inspiring and offer encouragement to anyone listening that there is a way out and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You have a voice and we hear you. If you're a woman who would like to share her story and be a guest on this podcast, please visit awakentofreedom.ca and fill out the little form requesting to be a guest. Join us every week for a new story of courage and hope. New episodes will be uploaded every Thursday. If you'd like to see our faces, please head over to YouTube and don't forget to like and subscribe. Feel free to comment as that helps the algorithm and allows more people to view our content. So with that, let's get started.
So, at that point, we had been married almost, I think, 9 years. I think we'd been married 9 years. Okay, so here's the side part of the story, that in those 9 years, the kids' biological dad, husband number two, I think we need a flow chart for all my husbands up here. Husband number two. Husband number two, who was never a Jehovah's Witness. He had seen the kids, I think, twice in 9 years, and he had paid 0 child support. So there's that. Okay, so here I am with the kids in the Dominican Republic. You know, I wanted to stay there because it was a pretty good life for us and the kids. But I didn't have any money. He'd shut down the business accounts and everything like that. So I really didn't have a way to easily make money at that time either. So I ended up flying to California where I had a friend, and my idea was, get my financial life together, get my financial life together, and the kids and I will go back to the Dominican Republic. Except, so the third husband, when he left us, he went to Colorado, which was kind of our home congregation. It was where I had known everybody for, at that point, like 15, 20 years, And he was there probably about 6 months before I got back to the States. And I'm in California. So I'm in California. I had been in California for about 3 months, working, saving money. I got a car. I was about ready to get us an apartment and everything. And the kids' biological dad calls and he says, I would like to see the kids. And he had legal visitation. So, it wasn't really like I could say no. He did have legal visitation. So he picks up the kids and then he says, you will never see them again. I'm taking them and you will never see them again. So of course here I am and I'm pretty much penniless. At the same time, my family is pressuring me to reconcile with husband number three because I don't have scriptural grounds for divorce, right? Because remember, domestic violence, abandonment, you can't divorce your husband in this religion because of that. And, besides the fact, he's the one that left anyway, but I was getting all this pressure that you have to do the right thing. You have to do the right thing. You have to do the right thing. You have to reconcile. And in the meantime, he had filed for divorce. So my family viewed my lack of reconciling as rebellion. They saw that as rebellious. And, okay, so My kids get kidnapped. He had visitation. Mhm.
Real quick. So you said that he hadn't had any part of their lives for like 10 years. And all of a sudden, he's decided that he wants to take them.
Well, there's story behind that too. I ended up finding out later that what happened was husband number three, Mr. Vindictive, had called him and said that I was mentally unstable, that if he loved the kids, he would take the kids because I wouldn't be able, I wasn't going to be able to take care of them, that they would be neglected if they stayed with me. So that was part of it.
So why did he think you were mentally unstable? Why did he make
Because
that or tell him that?
because he wanted to hurt me, because he wanted to punish me. What's the biggest way that you can punish your kids or punish a mother? You take away her kids. You know? Yeah, and I know that in his mind, he was such an egomaniac. I mean, he loved being an elder. He loved his position. In his mind, the greatest thing that I took away from him was his privileges, was his position. And so, you know what? I'm going to take away, I'm going to hurt you back. No concern of what are you going to do to the kids? He raised those kids as a stepdad for 9 years. You would have thought that maybe he would have, I don't know, but he didn't. But he didn't. There were some other things too. I know the kids' dad, he had gotten remarried and she didn't have kids and they couldn't have kids together. I know he couldn't have kids. He couldn't have kids. And so what do you do when you have a wife that wants kids and you can't have kids? Then coincidentally, you have random stepdad who calls out of the blue and says, "Hey, your kids are in danger because your ex-wife's crazy." Great. Let me just take the kids, you know? So once his visit, so I called attorneys and here I am in a financial predicament too, because I just was back in the country, barely working a couple of months. The ex had filed for divorce. He'd cleared out accounts and everything. I don't have the money to hire an attorney. Then it's a jurisdictional nightmare because I hadn't been in California long enough to be considered a resident of California. He takes the kids to Florida. I'm not a resident of Florida. Technically, the kids weren't residents of Florida either. The custody orders were out of Colorado. So I literally have a cross-country jurisdictional nightmare. It was a nightmare. It was a total nightmare. So I gotten legal advice. The legal advice was, well, you know what? It doesn't matter if he has them 2 weeks or 10 weeks. If his legal visitation is 10 weeks, you have to wait until the 10 weeks are over until you can even do anything because he's not breaking the law. He's got visitation. Oh my God. Those are like the worst 10 weeks of my life. Because he told me you're never going to see him again. He wouldn't let me talk to them on the phone. I mean, he cut me off from them completely. So, I'm like biting my fingernails as the 10 weeks go by, trying to figure out what am I going to do. I took on like extra jobs. I had like 3 jobs. I'm trying to save as much money as possible. So as soon as the 10 weeks was over, I was in Florida at the police station with the custody orders because I had full custody of the kids. And I go to the police station with the custody orders and they said, "I'm sorry, you're not a resident of Florida. These are Colorado custody orders. There's nothing we can do." So they said you could try to get an emergency custody order. Maybe with an emergency custody order, we might be able to do something with that. So I go back to Colorado. I get the court to issue an emergency custody order. I go back to Florida. They're I don't know if it was a district, I don't know who it was. Their legal counsel said, "Sorry, we can't do anything with this either." So now we're in a custody battle. Now I'm in a full out custody battle. And divorce because the third husband had filed for divorce too. So I go to Colorado for the first. Oh, you know what? Let me make sure everybody understands too. I was a faithful Jehovah's Witness through this whole freaking mess. I was going to meetings in California. I'm going to freaking meetings in Florida. I'm going out in service. I am a full-blown Jehovah's Witness still. And in fact, probably even more so after the kids got kidnapped because I'm like, oh, Jehovah's going to save everything. Oh, I'm doing everything right. Jehovah's going to step in and this is going to be okay because I'm doing everything right. So I go to Colorado. By this time, my ex had been there for about 6 months. And of course, I'm going to go to the meeting while I'm going to custody court. So I show up at the Kingdom Hall and I'm like, hi, everybody. And they're like, and I get the 100% shun. And I have no idea why. I didn't do anything. There's no reason for anybody to shun me. And so one, I got zero support whatsoever. In the back of my head, I was hoping I'm pretty much living out of the car. Hopefully somebody in my old congregation that's known me for 15 years will let me sleep on their couch or something because of the custody issues and everything. And it was crickets. One person took me in, and it was somebody that I had studied the Bible with, 10 years prior. And she says, you know what? My house is your house. She was not baptized. She was a publisher at that point, but she says, my house is your house. And so she gave me keys to her house, and I was staying with her. And she was the one that says, you know what? They think you're an apostate. Everybody's saying you're an apostate. And I'm like, what? What? And she goes, I know. She goes, they don't know you. She says, I know you. She says, no, but nothing could be further from the truth. You're not. I go, yeah. So I go to the elders in Colorado, and they're just like, well, your head says you are. So, and you're not reconciling. So I guess time will tell. That was basically the answer. That what, I just get to get treated like an apostate and time will tell? I mean, what the heck? So then my study that had taken me in, they actually told her, if you don't kick her out, if you continue supporting her, we're going to take away your privileges of being a publisher. She was an unbaptized publisher. They took away her privileges of being a publisher for taking me in. And she defended me. Her and her sister, she had a sister too. They were the only two people that defended me. They go, you know what? She's not an apostate. And they went, yeah, well, take your privileges away. I mean, we are talking high control religions that men have the power, women have absolutely no say whatsoever. Damn. I mean, that's kind of all I have to say about that. Okay, so to make a long story short, that year I had to do 7 trips from Florida to Colorado between divorce and custody, back and forth for the whole year. And in that whole time, I didn't get to see my kids. I didn't get to see the kids. And eventually, he got custody. He got full custody of the kids. That's called parental alienation. By the time a kid's not allowed to speak to their mother for a year, kids are highly influenceable. You know what? In the kids' defense, though, too, he was not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So when he took them, he gives them Christmas and birthdays and holidays and, free run of anything you want and strict cult life out the window. I can't even necessarily say that I blame them, I mean, as painful it is to say, at least they got out of a cult, because I was not questioning the religion. Maybe I would have ended up raising them in the cult. I mean, because like I said, maybe you're willing to risk your own life, but I wasn't willing to risk my children's life. So I probably would have done whatever I had to do to continue raising them in a cult. So I guess the silver lining is that they are not Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm very grateful for that. That, the first part of their life, they had to be in a cult, but now they're not. So now I know I don't have kids. My whole entire religion, my family, everybody thinks I'm an apostate. And finally, I just got to this point where I was like, what the hell? Maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe God just doesn't want me. Maybe he didn't forgive me for leaving the first husband. Something, it shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this hard. And so that was when I took the program that I had made for the Mormons and I did it on myself. The loss of your kids is such a devastating loss that, it was so ridiculously hard. For a little bit there, it was like, why even bother getting out of bed? Why even bother living? I just lost my entire life. My entire life just blew up. I got to restart from scratch. I literally had a backpack, a backpack and a car. That was it. That was it. That's all I had. Okay. So I started the lifestyle reprogramming. I'm like, okay, I am now in the world. So let me love it. Let me love the people in the world, you know? Fears of Armageddon, my goals for the future. I restructured all of that. I did this massive, massive life restructure. So in a lot of the ways too, my idea was, well, I'm just going to live the best life I can until the end of the world comes and I'm dead. Because I was still brainwashed. I was still in a cult. I was still not questioning the religion. I was blaming myself. I was thinking that it was something wrong with me. So it took 2 years after that when I finally read The Crisis of Conscience. And I was like, oh my God, I grew up in a cult. That was when the religious lights went off and I was like, holy shit. I grew up in a cult. And then everything started making sense. Everything. And I was like, okay, all right. Okay. So let's see, where do we go from there? So, I got husband number 4. He has never been in the religion before. Um, I I used the money coaching, the business coaching, the lifestyle coaching that I had done in Utah. I used it on myself. We did really well in real estate for 6 years, and then we retired here to Ecuador. So I live in Ecuador right now on 40 acres. And
I can see behind you. It looks so beautiful. Like, just like, wow, paradise there. Incredible. I love it.
we've
You
got
built your own
40
paradise.
acres. Yeah, we've got 40 acres on the edge of the Amazon up in the mountains in Ecuador. And we've got a fully organic ranch. We've got a fully organic, well, I guess it's probably more like a farm than a ranch. We've got goats and chickens and horses and pigs and rabbits and dogs and we operate a healing retreat. So what we've done here over the last 4 years is actually a step up to like accelerated life coaching. It's life coaching plus plant medicine. And we do psilocybin, ayahuasca. Psilocybin is the magic mushrooms. Ayahuasca is DMT, basically, and the San Pedro, which is in the mescaline family. And so now between the life coaching and the plant medicines here at the retreat, man, this is taking healing to a whole other level. So I don't know if you want to even go into that because that's just,
Love to, because I've heard about ayahuasca. I personally haven't done it. But I was just actually listening to another podcast recently who had done it and actually went to a retreat. I think hers was uh in Peru, I believe, but yours sounds fantastic. So you're going to have to tell us all about that too. But let's hear what an ayahuasca treatment would be like. Like what could we experience and hope to gain from coming out of that? Can't wait
one
to hear.
plant, yeah, one plant medicine session is worth probably 5 years of therapy. What it does is, okay, so we have our conscious mind and we have the unconscious mind. Most of our issues are in the unconscious part of our mind. Logically, we can be like, I shouldn't feel like this, but I don't know why I feel like this. I want to do this, but I can't. Or I'm depressed and I don't know why. And the reason is because all of that emotional baggage is in the unconscious part of the mind. And you cannot logic your way out of that. You know, as much as you logically say, I have no reason to be depressed, if it is in the programming in the unconscious part of the mind, you need extra tools to do that. Talk therapy, you could do talk therapy for 30 years and not get very far. So let me start with psilocybin really quick. So psilocybin Psilocybin is the medicine of the mind. Psilocybin, it attaches to the serotonin receptors in the brain. So there are visual distortions and stuff like that. But I guess basically the easiest way I could describe it is there's a firewall between your logic brain and your unconscious brain. And we will logically say, I I'm not going to forgive her, or, I know I should, but I won't. Our logic brain gets in the way of healing. We can sometimes be our own worst enemy, for sure. And so what all three of the plant medicines do, it's almost like it lowers that firewall. So now you've got brain coherence between right, left brain sides of the mind. And, it's not like alcohol or anything like that where you're intoxicated. You're fully functioning. You're able to talk. You're able to look at problems and go, huh, but without the firewall of resistance to healing. I mean, it's almost like that just gets mute. And you're able to just release the emotions. They just evaporate. And it's just like, it's not like it's almost like you're looking at yourself. You're like, oh, look at that lady over there. She's healing. And that healing is you, I mean, it's like you shed layers and layers and layers of baggage, emotion, and you come out feeling so much lighter. I mean, it is some of the people that I treat with the psilocybin specifically. Psilocybin is fantastic for PTSD, addictions of any kind, depression. I've helped, I don't even know how many people, I've got 2 people coming next month that had been on antidepressants for like 30 years and they wanted to come off. And through psilocybin microdosing therapies, they've been able to come off the antidepressants completely and now have a full life experience being able to come down here and use these plant medicines. So psilocybin is the medicine for the mind. Ayahuasca is the medicine for the soul. They call it the mother plant. And psilocybin is ayahuasca, it's like that plant reaches into your soul and wraps up your heart and says, come here, let's heal your soul. Where the psilocybin is healing the mind, the ayahuasca is in your heart. When you read about ayahuasca, you will hear about purging, which basically means puking. So there is usually vomiting associated with ayahuasca, and here's why. You are not vomiting anything that is in your digestive tract. You are throwing up emotion. And I know that sounds insane, but I'm now the vomit expert. So they call our gut the second brain, right? In fact, like 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut. The gut biome is responsible for a lot of our emotional health. In fact, many of our emotions we actually feel in our stomach. So, we'll say things like, I feel like I got punched in the gut, or, I got stabbed in the gut, or I've got butterflies in my stomach. Even our vocabulary is helping us understand that we feel a lot of emotion in our stomach. Maybe if you have to speak in front of a crowd, you even throw up because of nerves sometimes, So we have a ton of emotions that are actually in our stomach. Here's another quick fact. We actually have more neurons in our gut brain than we do in our brain. They estimate that there's this is crazy, 100 to 800 million neurons in our gut. Now, I don't know why they can't narrow that number down. I mean, that's a huge range, 100 to 800 million neurons, but that gut brain is actually more wired than that brain. So, as you go about therapy, we talk about the past and we talk about our brain, but there is no modern therapy medicine that is focusing on the stomach brain and all of the emotions that are stored in that stomach brain. So what ayahuasca is helping you do is get those emotions out of your body. As weird as it is to say, I can tell the difference when somebody's vomiting sadness, when somebody's vomiting anger, when somebody's vomiting hurt, when somebody's vomiting betrayal. they're different. And hands down, everybody says, "Oh my God, you were right." I felt the anger and I could feel myself throwing up the anger. It, it- I, it's unlike anything that you have probably ever experienced before. But interestingly enough, ayahuasca is actually DMT. And of all of the plant medicines, DMT is the only one that the brain actually is already producing. There's a burst of DMT at birth, and there's a burst of DMT at death. Our brain already has DMT in it. So we're not even ingesting a foreign substance. We're ingesting a natural product. It's a plant. It's a plant medicine, so it's not a pharmaceutical, it's not chemically made or anything. It's something that merges beautifully with our brains naturally because we already have it. Um, so I'm just going to share this one example because the healing that this man had was probably one of the most powerful sessions that I've had. It was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and this guy, he was an ex Jehovah's Witness. He's a biorobotic engineer, atheist. I mean, he's about as opposite of a person that would do ayahuasca as you can imagine. Um, doesn't believe in emotions, doesn't believe in anything. He's a super logical, super analytical engineer. So, and it was mainly, I think it was more his wife that wanted him to take the plant medicines, or he had heard about it, but he found me on Facebook and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're a Jehovah's Witness." And okay, so I'll do that with you. Um, so he came down here, and the day before he was asking me about the purging, and I'm explaining to him, it's not digestive. I'm sorry. I don't know how to explain this to you, but it's emotions. And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." He didn't eat for 2 days because he didn't want to vomit. He also had a significant amount of trauma, abuse, and his son had committed suicide a couple years ago. So he had quite a lot of pain to process. And so one of the first things that everybody asks is they're like, what is ayahuasca going to be like? What is this going to be like? You know what? And after I've guided around 200 journeys with plant medicines right now. And so my professional response is always, I have no idea. because here's why, we're going to I've got the ayahuasca. It grows right here on the property. We prepare the ayahuasca. I'm going to give it to you. You are going to drink this dose. I am going to drink this dose. My shaman protege son, who comes from generations of shamans, he's going to drink this dose. We're all going to drink out of the same cup. Your wife is going to drink this dose, and we are all going to have a different experience because it is not the medicine, it is you. It is what is in your mind. It is what is in your soul. It is how much you want to heal. There are some people who come and they might mentally want to intellectually, I guess, they might intellectually want to heal, but at the same time, maybe they're like, "Oh, I don't want to go there," and so they'll kind of like resist it. So everybody's experience is going to be completely different based on you know, based on how willing you are to say, "Let me get this out. I'm going to vomit as much as possible. I'm going to leave this here." So, so, so he did. He started vomiting. And the first thing he says was, "Oh my God, you're right." He goes, "That's anger." One thing that he had told me before, when he had described the abuse that he'd gone through, he says, "I will never forgive my mother. I don't care. I've been to therapy. I will never forgive her." And so as he's getting rid of the emotions, because see, a lot of times we're holding on to, literally, we're holding on to anger. We're holding on to resentment. Where are we holding it? Our stomachs, apparently. Why can we not forgive people? Because we're holding on to the emotions. Many times what we think is such a logical decision is actually an emotional decision. You know, we don't let go of the past because we're emotionally attached to it. We don't forgive because it hurts, because because of emotions. Logically, we should. Logically, yeah, we should dump the past, but we are holding on to it because of these emotions. So as you're purging these emotions, it becomes now you have a clean slate to say, oh, yeah, I get it. Ayahuasca is fascinating too because it opens up your perception so that you can look at situations from different viewpoints. So in this guy's case, he felt like he could go into his mom's brain and feel what she had gone through as a child and feel what she inherited from her parents and grandparents, generational trauma. And he just started crying and he says, I forgive her. I forgive her. She couldn't do anything else. But that was after he's already purged all of the anger and the resentment out of himself. So, he's purging the hurt, he's purging all of this. And you know what? Very often there are very spiritual experiences with plant medicines too. Um, whether they're real or imaginary is probably another topic for conversation. I tend to be very logical, very analytical mind too. And if somebody had described to me the spiritual experiences of plant medicines, I probably would have called bullshit. And so now I'm down here doing it, and I'm a 100% believer because the things I have experienced myself and I have seen other people experience in the plant medicines is it's out of this world. It is not in our realm of understanding. These plant medicines are opening up our minds to realities that we don't even know exist in our little shopping bubbles of, westernized world. They're that's all I can say. It's mind blowing. I need to do a whole video on that, I think. Mr. Atheist, who had lost his son a couple of years ago, he's sitting there with the plant medicine, and all of a sudden he says, my son is right here talking to me. And I go, okay. I said, so what does your son want to say? And he says, my son is telling me to heal. My son is telling me to let it go. And I said, well, you know what? Just talk to him. Just talk to him. He started crying and he's crying. He's like, what the hell? Is this real? And I said, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. We're taking it for what it is, So you have that conversation with your son. Man, he cried and he cried and he cried. Okay, so then afterwards, dude, I have biorobotic engineer atheist guy who's like, what the hell? That was the most transformative experience of my life. He goes, I don't even know what I expected, but he says, that beat it by 100 times. He says, how come everybody doesn't know about this? And I go, my husband's working on a website.
And now people on the
Like,
podcast know about it too.
Like, everybody needs to do this. And I go, I know. Okay, so, that experience, did he really have a communication with life beyond death? You can decide. My opinion, I don't care if it's real or not. That man feels better. So it's irrelevant whether it's real or not. The healing was real. He said that for 20 some years he takes sleeping pills, and even with the sleeping pills, he says he usually sleeps about 5 hours and then has to take another one. That was the first time he said he slept for 12 hours straight. He wakes up the next day, I feed him, he goes and he takes another 5-hour nap. He's like, man, the sense of peace. He says, I literally feel like 50 pounds lighter. And I go, well, sweetheart, you might have vomited 50 pounds. But he's just like that. There's no words to describe that. Okay. So that's my description of ayahuasca. Um, of all of the trips. Okay. So I guess probably the other question that people have is what's a bad trip? If you Google psychedelics, you'll hear this. It's just a bad trip. Well, that's why you have a guide.
Thanks for joining us this week on Awaken to Freedom. Join us next week for the conclusion of Dena's story. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe. Feel free to comment, and we will see you next week.